Hello, my dear friends. It's been a while since I have done a longer video, sharing it with you. And today I thought I'd share some thoughts that have been welling up in my consciousness as a result of a conversation that I had with Swami Sarvapriyananda at the Rubin Museum. Swami Sarvapriyananda is a monk at the New York Vedanta Center, very articulate, very clear in explaining the fundamental tenets of Vedanta. So when we did this conversation and we were introduced by the curator and president of the organization at the Rubin Museum, Tim, he quoted from the Vedanta, and this was the quote that inspired me to do this podcast with you today, or this conversation with you today. And this is the quote. So I'm seeing all your wonderful feedback, and I will try and respond to some of your questions at the end of today's sharing of these ideas. So here's the quote from the Vedanta. Space begins when we have a body. Okay, space begins when we have a body. My body, in relationship to all other bodies, creates the experience of space. Time begins when we start thinking. Why? Because as soon as we start thinking, we create a subject-object split. There's me and there's everything else that I call the world, the universe. So time is a construct that uses the ego-based conditioned mind as fundamental reality. As long as I'm identifying with my ego, and then I have continuity of memory using the ego as my internal reference point. And so time is a result of identifying with ego that sees me as a separate self from the rest of the universe. Once again, time is the continuity of memory using the ego as an internal reference point. And then the third principle, causation begins when we apply limitations. So as soon as we imply beginning and ending to any process, then we come up with the idea of causality. This is the cause of this, and this, which is the effect of this cause, becomes the cause of something else. So causation is related to linear thinking, using once again the subject-object split. But if you go beyond the subject-object split into infinite being and infinity, which cannot be conceptualized, only represented by a symbol, then cause-effect disappears. That's why as soon as we go beyond our ego mind, we are in timeless being, which is beyond cause and effect, And in Vedanta, this is considered to be freedom from karma. So once again, three very beautiful principles. Space begins when we have a body. Time begins when we start thinking. Causation begins when we apply limitations. But as non-local beings, we live in Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means truth, Chit means pure awareness, Ananda means bliss. That is our essential nature. Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda, which is beyond cause and effect, which is freedom from karma, which is timeless and also spaceless. So the true self is timeless spaceless, beyond cause-effect, beyond karma, therefore infinite, therefore eternal, therefore immortal, therefore not subject to birth and death. I think nothing could be simpler than this. But now let's go a little deeper, because I will share with you some principles that might help you to find true freedom in yourself, if you're interested. So the first principle is our true self. Our true self is pure being beyond ego identity. Our true self is independent of the fluctuations of the mind. So what are fluctuations of the mind? Fluctuations of the mind are thoughts and emotions. And what are thoughts and emotions? They are the interpretation of other fluctuations of consciousness that we call perceptual activity. And these are happening all the time. Even right now I'm speaking to you because as a result of fluctuations of the mind. You're listening to me and interpreting this because fluctuations of the mind. But your true self has witnessed many fluctuations of the mind and many fluctuations of consciousness, including that which we call body and mind. So once upon a time when you were a baby, the fluctuations resulted in the experience that was the body-mind of a baby. And then the body-mind of a teenager, the body-mind of a young adult, the body-mind that is right now, Deepak. All this while, the fluctuations of the mind were changing, like a movie on a screen. But the witnessing awareness in which they were changing was independent of these fluctuations. As my friend Rupert Spira says, that the screen is not affected by the program or the fictional characters in the program that are interacting with each other in the domain of space-time and causality. The screen is not affected by the program on the screen, which is ever-changing. So your body's ever-changing fluctuation that we call sensory perception. Your mind is ever-changing fluctuation that we call thoughts and emotions and interpretations. But you, the one who's the witnessing awareness in all of this, are the same. When you were a baby, the same awareness, teenager, the same awareness, now the same awareness. But because these fluctuations are in time, they are subject to birth and death, which is happening all the time. But at a deeper level, that which is fluctuating as mind-body is independent of the fluctuations because it is ever pristine, it is never tarnished, it is never affected, it is eternally, timelessly watching the show. So that's a nice principle. Your true self is independent of the fluctuations of the mind. Okay, the next insight, the first insight was that, after the three principles explained from the Vedanta. The second principle is that what human beings call mind, body and world appearance, they actually are happening all the time as a unified experience. Mind, brain, body and the world go together. They are simultaneous, coinciding, synchronistic fluctuations of consciousness, ever-changing. So right now, your mind, the mind of your being, which is your jiva, your soul, is fluctuating as the experience mind, body and world together, unified, all go together. And that's ever shifting, ever changing. In fact, whatever you are experiencing right now is the past. Whatever you are experiencing right now is the past. Even by the time you hear my words and try to understand them and figure them out and have insight, by the time that happens, it's over. So every perceptual experience is of the past. Every mental experience is of an interpretation of the past. So to say that we are totally in the present doesn't mean from a perceptual point of view. That's why, as I've quoted many times before, even your present experience of watching me is a lucid dream. Your present experience of watching me is a lucid dream in a vivid now. The lucid dream that you're experiencing moment by moment is over by the time you experience it. So the only thing that we call the present is the presence. The presence in which this lucid dream is being projected. And that presence is you as fundamental being. Is also me as fundamental being. When you're in that presence and I'm in that presence, we're in the same presence. And that presence is not located in space and time. Why? Because our being, our fundamental being, our consciousness is not in space and time. Why do I say that? Well, because our consciousness has no form. Because it has no form, it can't be in a specific location. And because it has no form, it cannot be in space and time. So it is infinite being. And that infinite being is resonating as the unified experience that you call mind, body, and world, moment by moment, in a vivid now. And now is the presence, eternal and timeless, in which all experience happens. Experience is in time, but the experiencer is not in time. The scenery is in time, but the seer is not in time. The knowledge is in time, but the knower is not in time. The object, so-called object, is in time, but the observer is not in time. I think nothing could be simpler than that. Okay, so Principle 2, mind, body, world appearance are a unified fluctuation of the deeper self. Okay, now third principle, identifying with the fluctuations that we call mind, body, and world appearance hides reality. So identifying with the fluctuating appearances of the world, with the fluctuating appearance of the body, with the fluctuating appearance of the mind. By identifying with them, we become finite and we squeeze ourselves into the volume of a body and the span of a lifetime, and then we create constructs like birth and death and karma, and we get imprisoned by them. This is the true meaning of the phrase by Rumi when he says, why do you stay in prison when the door is wide open? Well, the reason you stay in prison is the prison is invisible and the door is also invisible, and it's a creation of self-engineered, self-constructed limitations in the field of infinite possibilities, which is your true self. Okay, so identifying with the fluctuations of mind. You're not the mind, you're the observer or the consciousness in which the mind is a fluctuating experience. You're not the body, but the observer of the body as sensations, images, feelings, thoughts all combine to create a gestalt of experience that we call the body, but it's a fluctuating experience in consciousness. So you're not mind, you're not body, and you're also not the world appearance, which is an extension of that unified experience that we call pure consciousness. Okay? Nothing could be simpler. So identifying with the fluctuations of world appearance, body and mind hides the real reality, which is exactly, again, Rumi has a beautiful poem of this. He says, this is not the real reality. The real reality is behind the curtain. In truth, we are not here. This is our shadow. Okay, this is also the Christian doctrine of I'm in the world and not of it. I'm in the world and not of it. It's the basis of the statement by Teilhard de Chardin, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Or as I like to say, we are non-local beings having a local experience. We're timeless beings having a time-bound experience. Our true nature is beyond space-time and causality. So identifying with the fluctuations of world appearance, fluctuations of consciousness, body, mind, and world appearance hides the true reality. I'm getting all of your feedback right now, and I'm very gratified to notice that everybody says this is clear and this is easy to understand. Okay, so the fourth and final principle for today in this conversation is your infinite being cannot be defined, cannot be imprisoned, cannot be contained, cannot be squeezed into its finite expressions as mind, body, and world appearance. Your infinite being is not defined or limited. Osmo, thank you for saying you understand. Your infinite being cannot be defined or contained or limited by its ongoing fluctuations that are evanescent, that are transient, that are ephemeral. They seem to have continuity because of your presence, presence of being, presence of that which we call I, presence of that which we call I beyond ego mind, beyond conditioned mind. The brain being the objective correlate of the conditioned mind, and perception also being the world appearance that arises in the conditioned mind. So that's it. You as an infinite being are not limited by the fluctuations of infinite being. So some people are saying this is not clear, some people are saying it's clear. Well, if it's not clear, try to listen to this again and let me know. Aurora says, but being keeps pouring itself into ephemeral expressions. Yes, that's the play of being. So think of being as the ocean of consciousness, and think of the ephemeral self of all the waves on the ocean. And as your current experience of mind, body, universe, and that you call me, the ego me, is one of those waves on the ocean playing with other waves on the ocean. They're kind of arising and subsiding, they're mixing with each other, they're playing with each other. And that play is called Leela, the play of consciousness. Joanne Cooper says, I get it, Deepak. Thank you, Joanne. Swanson Achala says, God bless you too. Ramanand Dikshit says it's clear. Salongo, play of being, and she gets it. And then I can walk the middle path. The middle path is right there, to be in the world and not of it. Okay. So what happens if we actually live like this? Live with these principles. Number one, space begins when we have a body. Time begins, number two, when we start thinking. Number three, causation begins when we apply limitations. Number four, non-local being lives in bliss. Number five, your true self is independent of the fluctuations of the mind. Number six, mind, body, world appearance are a unified experience as continuing fluctuations of consciousness. Number 6, the world appearance, or should I say identifying with the world appearance, hides true reality. That is, identifying with mind, body, world experience as fluctuating, time-bound experience hides the true reality. And number 8 or whatever, I've forgotten now, your infinite being cannot be defined by its fluctuations. So we are free. And once we are free, then what happens? Well, we live in possibilities. We live playfully. Creative spontaneity, playfully, is our natural expression. We also live in comfort, embracing paradox, uncertainty, ambiguity, unpredictability. We have access to infinite love and creativity and synchronicity, and we realize the power of intention. What more could we want? We enjoy a joyful, energetic body, a loving, compassionate heart, a reflective, alert mind, but most importantly, lightness of being, like those waves on the ocean, interacting. We enjoy the present moment. We play on the ocean of consciousness as waves with each other, and we evolve as the evolving universe. What more? We are fulfilled. Where we have arrived, where we started from. T.S. Eliot, we shall not cease from explorations, and the end of our exploring is to arrive where we started from and know the place for the first time. Thank you, my friends, and God bless.